Welcome everybody. We are ready to start this webinar with the Startup in Residence 2018 program. I'm going to turn it right over to Krista Kanellakis, Deputy Director of Innovation at the San Francisco Mayor's Office of Civic Innovation.
Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Krista Kanellakis. I'm the Deputy Innovation Officer with the Mayor's Office of Civic Innovation, and I am thrilled to be here and share more about our Startup in Residence program, and also, most importantly, give some of our past startups a chance to tell their stories. I think that's where you really get to see and hear the value of the program and why we think it's a great opportunity for you and your startup to really get a start in the govtech sector. So just quickly to run through the agenda. Next slide. First we're just going to welcome a few of the folks who will be speaking and share a little bit about what is Startup in Residence, how the model works. We're going to run pretty quickly through some of the challenges that the cities and local governments from across the country have submitted, and then dive a little bit deeper into the program itself and how it works and some of the basics. But we really, you know, as I said earlier, one of the main goals here today is just to really highlight some of the startup stories. And so we're going to have two great storytellers who can share some of their experience in the STIR program. Next slide. I am Krista Kanellakis. We also have Dee Prasad on the line. She's the program manager for the STIR program on our team. And then we have Tiffany Pang from Appledore, who worked with West Sacramento and talk about their story. And then Tony Scherba from Yeti, who actually worked with two different city departments in San Francisco, but we'll be focusing on one of those partnerships. Next slide. So here's the basics of the Startup in Residence program. It's really simple. STIR pairs startups with departments and local governments to really tackle some of the high priority civic challenges that those agencies are facing in their city. So, you know, these are some of the key ingredients, but really the main goal is to achieve better outcomes for residents and those city departments. Next slide. So just a little bit about the history of the program. It was founded by our team in the mayor's office in San Francisco in 2014. And it was really with this idea of Mayor Lee saying, you know, we need the best and brightest in government to help us solve some of our complex problems. Cities face a really incredible amount of challenges. We run, you know, in our city in San Francisco, we run everything from an airport to a zoo. And so we really need the smartest and the brightest coming to work with us on helping us to solve some of these challenges. And specifically for the STIR program, we fundamentally believe that we need to bring in some of our top entrepreneurs, both in our own city and across the world, to come and work with us on opportunities that are real pain points that our city staff are facing and the needs of government. And the whole idea here is how do we sort of unveil some of these really core challenges and pain points that government is facing and really give entrepreneurs direct access to the staff people and potential buyers who are needing support and new technology solutions. And so we're really excited. So as I mentioned, in 2014, the program launched in San Francisco. In 2016, we scaled to 4 different cities across the Bay Area. So that was West Sacramento, San Leandro, Oakland, and San Francisco. And then for 2018, we're really going big, and we're really excited to share that in 2018, we have cities and local governments across the country. So we're really from West Coast to all the way to the East Coast. We're covering some really exciting different cities. You can see them all here. So in the next slide. So here's a high-level overview of the program. Right now, we're in this phase 1. So applications are open until December 10th, and it's midnight Pacific time. So get those applications in. Then we'll go into a evaluation process where the department that the startup has submitted their challenge to will have a chance to review the applications that were submitted and interview the startups that have are sort of the top 3 for that challenge. And then in January, we'll select the finalists, and departments will make offers, and that's when you really start to dive in on getting into some of the challenges and pain points that the department is facing, and we do some project scoping and sort of stakeholder mapping, and really diving into what is it that the department is looking for, and the startup has a chance to start to help shape some of the scope of what the program will look like. And then February to May is really the core of the program. So it's the 16-week residency where the startup and the city department are really sitting side by side, understanding, the startup gets a chance to really understand how the department has been facing this, solving this challenge up until this point, and really an opportunity to have this dynamic sort of collaboration and co-development of a new solution that is responding to that problem. And at the end of the program, we have a big demo day. It's really a big celebration for both the startups and the city departments to be on stage, share the work that they're doing. We got senior leadership from cities to really join that and recognize all the hard work that both sides are done. We also invite other leaders from the tech sector. We invite investors and counterparts in other cities. The idea is we want this to be a great chance to put your work on stage and give you an opportunity to shine. And then May to June is the time where there's an opportunity for the startup and the department to go into contract. This is at the discretion of the department. So if the department is really excited about what the startup has developed and they really feel like it's responding to the need, then the department will be able to make the decision to move forward and start to negotiate with you on what the pricing model will look like moving forward. And so now we will kind of quickly highlight some of the challenges in 2018. So as I mentioned, we have 12 local governments and really spanning the country. So as you can see here, we have Boulder, Colorado has 3 different challenges looking at how do we convert all the PDFs that we have into open data. They're looking for a public record and engagement app, process automation. Yeah, and we have great, San Francisco has a lot of different solutions, a lot around transportation, process and workflow improvement. There's a parking application. Really, what I recommend everyone do is to go to the Startup in Residence website, where you can really dive deeper into each of these challenges. So if you go to startupinresidence.org/apply, you'll see, and then you go to challenges, you'll see in detail the departments describe the problem statement that they have, the context for that problem, and then what their specific technology need is. And you can also take a look there and sort of sort by kind of policy and industry vertical. So highly recommend kind of digging through there and exploring. And with that, I am very excited to introduce Tiffany Pang from Appledore. Appledore did amazing work with the city of West Sacramento to map and improve the workflow for. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Tiffany to really share her story and her experience of participating in the STIR program.
Cool, thanks very much. Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Pang. I'm the co-founder of Appledore, and during last year's STIR program, we partnered with the city of West Sacramento to develop Outreach Grid, a collaborative software platform for service outreach workers, for service providers, law enforcement, and city management to manage their city's homelessness. And I'll just speak a little bit about my experience with STIR and how we went about developing Outreach Grid with the city of West Sacramento. So at the start of the program, we were a humble team of 2 software engineers from San Francisco working at tech startups. My co-founder, John Kadenko, and I both lived in San Francisco. We had been volunteers at food banks, soup kitchens, shelters, all sorts of things surrounding the homelessness space. And we've both seen how the city had changed over the years in its growing homelessness population. And that really concerned us, especially me as a native San Franciscan. I really wanted to do more than just sort of watch as more folks end up on the streets and need more and more help. So I came across this opportunity called STIR, and I started digging into it. And I found the chance and the opportunity to work with a city like West Sacramento with a history of very progressive homelessness work, and to use this chance to utilize our tech background towards solving an issue with such a deep impact. So when we were fortunate enough to get into the program, we quit our day jobs, we rolled up our sleeves, and we formed a company and got to work. Next slide. So the challenge brought to us by the city of West Sacramento was they didn't know where people experiencing homelessness were and what services they needed. They were very eager and very passionate about ending homelessness in their city. And at the end of the day, next slide. They needed to go from just understanding a map of their city to understanding the map of their city's homelessness. Next slide. And while they had their own methods of collecting information to understand where different camps were in their city, it required folders of paper notes. It required a team of outreach workers to go out and find these camps, and sometimes they were the same camps, and hours of information sharing to build up a cohesive map across multiple agencies to just understand the city's homelessness each time they wanted to sort of do outreach work or to give information to city managers who wanted to know. Next slide. So during the program, we went on an outreach effort with the city of West Sacramento and also the county that they were in, which was called Yolo County. And we came away with 2 major learnings, that camps and transient populations were very difficult to locate. And next slide. And despite multiple agencies working together on the same issue, there's a lot of overlap. Information about homelessness were decentralized in emails, in phone calls, in notes, and paper. And there was a lot of overlapping efforts going on that needed to be streamlined. So our team at Appledore came together to make a mobile platform to coordinate homelessness information that was intuitive to use and that outreach workers and city managers alike can use either in the field while they're doing outreach or in the office to sort of understand their data. And to accomplish this, STIR gave us very helpful tools and frameworks to go about designing and developing with the user in mind. Because this process of procurement is unique for most government agencies when they try to buy software, buy hardware, buy stuff for themselves. It's a very long process, and maybe Tony can speak a little bit about that in a bit. We wanted to, as engineers, we're going in and trying to build this build this product with as much empathy as possible. So on top of going out into the field with them and doing outreach, and trying to live out a day in their shoes, using the tools that they had, we also developed user stories with them. User stories about specific user actions that they wanted to have in the tool, specific dashboards that they wanted to have. Some we had to refine, some we had to toss, but we used these stories to set discrete milestones over the course of the program to make sure that we were developing a tool that was useful for them at the end, that they would want to continue using even after the program. We also developed very discrete milestones for them to try and use the program over time. Even if it was very rough and ill-colored or the div wasn't in the right place, we still sent it over and had them review it. Next slide. So at the end of the program, we created Outreach Grid, a mobile platform to coordinate homelessness information. And in our platform, we have 3 main components. Next slide. We had our intake tool, which allows outreach workers to collect and share information in the field and to store a history about a client and a camp. Next tool, or next step, sorry. We also have our mapping tool, which allows outreach workers to map where camps were and also to draw out paths that led to the camp so that future service workers can go in with more ease. And we also had an information sharing platform so that different agencies that were on Outreach Grid can control who saw what information. So if the police department were less interested in client information, they didn't have to see client information. And service providers who were more interested would see both camp and client information. And they would be able to tag each other and change the workflow state of different action items, and ultimately build a sort of collaborative community around homelessness. Next slide. So Outreach Grid enables cities to have a very up-to-date status of homelessness, to save money on data entry and data gathering. And that was very important to them because whatever process that they were going to replace this software with need to be much faster. And more importantly, it also reduces on training time because it was built for use very intuitively. So most software that they had procured in the past, they needed some sort of training to get on board, some sort of manual that they had to review. But because we had built this to be intuitively used for social workers, outreach workers, law enforcement agencies, people who typically don't have frequent interactions with a computer every single day, we were able to reduce on training time as well. Next slide. So at the end of STIR, we ran a pilot program with the city of West Sacramento and ultimately signed a contract with them. And already over the past year, they were able to use this tool to better serve people experiencing homelessness in their city. We also recently signed with the city of Davis, which is a neighboring city to the city of West Sacramento, and we're working on information sharing agreements between the two cities so that they can collaborate not only within their own city, but also intercity. And on top of that, we're in talks with about 24 cities and continuum of care agencies across the country And really, it's thanks to STIR that sort of kickstarted this movement. I'd be happy to talk to anyone who's interested in applying to STIR and getting more insights about the program. Cool. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was awesome. I think a really great example of how a startup really can learn a lot about how their city partner is in the field. And I just really admire that team's work and really deeply understanding the problem and developing something that was really responding to the needs of West Sacramento. And at the same time is an opportunity. You know, it's a common shared problem that other police departments and cities face. And so a great story. So next up, we have Tony from Yeti, who's going to share a little bit more about his experience in the city of San Francisco, working with our Office of Contract Administration and our Committee on Information Technology. And so with that, Tony, take it away.
Hello. My name's Tony Scherba. I'm the CEO of Yeti, which is a company here in San Francisco doing development and design work. So we predominantly work with companies like Google and Westfield Malls, Harvard and MIT to build new products. We were specifically interested, we've been getting more and more interested in building technology for governments, however. We see that there's like a lot of opportunity to build some really impactful products that are going to help a lot of people. And so when we were looking through the proposals that were put out there, or the requests for proposals that were put out there by the city of San Francisco, we specifically, our eye was caught specifically by the request for proposal from the Office of Contract Administration. And what we ended up, I guess we can go to the next slide. So we wanted to start things off with a little bit of a joke here. It's more for the civil servants in the audience that are getting messages that it might be hard to hear me is okay. Cool. Sounds like everything's fine. But anyway, procurement is not easy. And so if we go to the next slide, this is a direct quote from Robert Henning, who is who we worked with on this. The government procurement process is scattered and threadbare. There's not a lot of information out there for people to understand what's going on. And this isn't for citizens, it's for the employees that actually work within government. They, I think as Tiffany mentioned, it's really hard to buy things if you're a government employee. The process is just full of red tape and very difficult. So we wanted to help with that and make that better. So if you go to the next slide. So what makes procurement so difficult? We started by interviewing, almost, well, not every department, but departments of different sizes and different structures. So we talked with the airport, we talked with the fire department, we talked with just the Department of IT, and like some really small departments in the city. And what we found was they don't know which path is right for them. So there's many different ways to go about buying things. They don't know what forms are needed. There's a lot of different forms that you need to fill out if you're going to buy anything within the city, just to make sure that, you know, obviously there's no corruption or anything like that going on. And then a major question is, you know, am I doing this the right way? Making sure that nothing is, you know, you're not messing anything up. So if you go to the next slide. So what we created is a chatbot that would do this and help answer questions that people had. What happens currently is everybody calls into OCA and asks questions, hey, you know, around all those things I mentioned before. And we created a chatbot that would, you know, answer 80% of those questions, you know, using like the 80-20 rule. And we called it PAGE, you know, procurement, answers, and information guided experience. It's not just a chatbot where it answers questions. We also have guided walkthroughs where someone can go in and get walked through like the whole process of purchasing something, and then a document library that stores all the forms and templates so that it's not just on somebody's computer and they have to email it when people ask for it. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show some of the things that we actually did. This is an example of sort of the random Q&A that we did. We ended up putting over 1,000 questions into it. We ended up training for it. It answers questions around vendor tiers, RFPs and SOWs, you know, sole sourcing contracts. So all kinds of, you know, stuff that's, you know, after going through the STIR program that you'll end up getting into, hopefully. So, and there's an example of it there on the right. If you go to the next slide. This is the guided walkthrough. So we have questions that people can, like, you can click on and it will give you the right answer. It's sort of like a choose your own adventure novel, if you remember flipping through those things. So next slide. And we created a document library. So, you know, like I was saying, it's really hard for people to actually find the documents that they need in order to buy things inside the city. And so that you could go into the chatbot right now and just say, you know, what's the PSC process flow, and you can get the document that would actually give you that. What we heard is currently, you know, a lot of people in the city are using Google to try to find some of these documents, which is not good. So go to the next slide. Here's just a quick overview of the technical infrastructure that we put in place. We have, and we're actually changing this a little bit now that we're getting into the reality of things. But on the right side, you'll see we have the application server. We use the natural language processing service, with.ai, the Facebook one, to do the natural language processing. And then we're building out like a training portal where city staff can go in and help train the chatbot so that you know, we don't have to use a ton of intern time to do it, which we ended up doing as part of STIR. It was really nice. The Office of OCA had a lot of interns that could help us train the chatbot, which was a big benefit. On the right side, we have an embeddable web code. No, you can go. It's fine. So what the result is Page helps, you know, replace the pain and frustration, standardize the guidance, and reduce the call volume. You know, all around just good things that answer, you know, those three major pain points that we outlined earlier. Go to the next one. So what's next? We are actually currently developing that training portal out that I mentioned. I guess as far as what's next as well, we are working with the city of San Francisco on a contract right now. We're going through our you know, super fun 12B compliance, which I was just joking around with Lawrence before we hopped on the call. It's you know, it's the major milestone you get before you get your contract signed. So we're hoping to have a contract signed before the end of the year. But we're really excited about this, and we've gotten some, already gotten introductions to the city of LA and the city of New York, because they have the same problem, and are interested in actually standardizing some of their procurement needs as well. We're thinking of expanding the use cases, but procurement seems to be something that people are really interested in, or a major pain point that needs to get solved. So yeah, that's what we're working on. We kind of spun out a little initiative outside of our standard service-based model, because this is actually a product that we've developed. So we have civic chatbots, which is a initiative/subsidiary within Yeti. And yeah, I guess that wraps it up for me. It was exciting to explore, government work.
Thanks, Tony. I think we all appreciated Tony and his team's sort of curiosity and in the procurement process, which is definitely one of the most complex challenges in government, and also one that I think we're really trying to tackle with our Startup in Residence program. And so the idea behind the program is really to make the procurement process a little bit easier for the startups who are working with their departments. And so from the external side and from the internal side. And so I think the work that Yeti did has really been a great starting point for providing resources internally, because even for many city staff, the procurement process is really confusing and complex and frustrating. And so that was an awesome project, especially for many of us procurement nerds out there in government. And so with that, I really want to thank Tony and Tiffany for sharing their stories, and you're all going to have a chance to ask them some questions. Before that, I just wanted to put the URL up there and really encourage folks to just read through the challenges and really put in your application. We've designed this program to make the application process as easy as possible for the startups to really enter into a partnership with their city departments. And so, as you'll see, unlike many other government RFPs that are out there, the challenge statements are very short, they're non-prescriptive, and the idea is really that the startup can come in and help work with the department to define what the product will look like. So it's a really big opportunity to really be able to shape the challenge and how it turns out. And I would just say that also, unlike other RFPs, the amount of time it takes to apply to the program is much shorter, and so really encourage folks to just dive in there and see what challenges are a good fit for their team. And so with that, want to just really open it up for questions. We have about 20 minutes, and so this is an opportunity to really fire away at our team in the Mayor's Office of Civic Innovation. I'm here to answer questions. Dee, our program manager, can answer a few of the questions that have already come up on the chat, so we'll go through those. And also just want to flag that for questions around specific challenges that have been posted by the cities, this isn't going to be the right forum to ask those questions, because we're not the sort of challenge owners. It's the cities themselves that deeply understand their challenges, and so we have a place for those kinds of questions, though, and the link is up here. And so if you have questions specifically about the challenge statements, you can submit them here, and all the responses will be posted publicly for everyone to see. It's part of what the transparent procurement process looks like. So if you put something in there, you'll get an answer to it, and everyone else will see it as well. And so with that, let's just open it up for questions for anyone on the call.
Great, thank you. And then I'll just start with one of the questions I was asked during the conversation. And to Krista's point, we're happy to take questions around kind of stir at large and obviously questions for Tony and Tiffany. And so there were some questions around the procurement process and how that really works. And so the procurement simplification isn't necessarily post-STIR. It actually starts now. We've spent several months working with our city and government partners to identify a pathway for procurement for each entity that's signed up for STIR. And there's a range. San Francisco has what we call an RFP bus. So that means when you apply and you submit this brief application, it actually begins an RFP process. And what that means is it qualifies as a competitive bid. Once a finalist is selected, you get to sign an agreement for a voluntary 16-week residency, the same for all of our partnerships. And at the end of that residency, if you're successful, the way Tiffany described, you have the opportunity to move directly into contract and negotiations with your partner at their discretion. That's the process that Yeti is in now. And it's all in thanks to kind of the streamlined process. For other cities, some of our newer cities, there's a multitude of options. Some of them are single source or just they have authorization to make purchases under a certain threshold amount. And that will vary, and you can find more information about that on our website under terms and conditions. So please take time to read through those. If you have questions about that, submit them to our FAQ. We'll talk to specific city partners and get you clarification. But in a nutshell, we've worked to simplify the process starting today. So instead of coming in and filling out a very complicated RFP application for each of these challenges, if you've been to the FS6 site, you'll notice that it's a pretty brief application. It's really about who you are, what your entity is, what you've done, what your interest is in GovTech, and how do you really see yourself being able to address this problem in a new way. And our partners are really interested in new and innovative solutions outside of their existing vendor pool. So, and then there's just a couple other questions around what does it look like afterwards. The type of contracting can range. It can be a SaaS contract, it can be a hardware contract, it can be a licensing contract. It will really just depend on your technology, your solution that you've developed, and what your partner chooses to do moving forward. So that's at each city has its own process, and so we'll walk you through that as part of the STIR learning and trainings. But it will be up to each city. There's variances. Let's go on to a couple more questions here. Let's see, we have a question from Sehal around the formalities once a startup is selected and contact the individual city. So just broadly, we do not encourage you to contact the cities directly. For all questions, please submit them to the Startup FAQ forum. There's two reasons for that. One is STIR is really the central body managing this application. And two, this is, as I mentioned, an RFP process. Therefore, questions and answers have to be submitted and exchanged in a public forum. And we cannot have potential vendors reaching out to city partners to have offline conversations. And so we encourage you to submit your information. We'll scribe your contact information, but we'll post answers to your questions through the Startup FAQ forum. If you have more questions, send us an email there, and we'll be happy to kind of give you some more direct answers. As far as what does it really look like to be involved, I can share more about that, but Tony or Tiffany, I'd love if you two would kind of talk about what does it really mean to be a STIR startup?
Okay, I guess I can answer first. to be a STIR startup, I think willing to take part in this very unique process. Like Krista said, like Tony mentioned, traditional procurement process is very laborious, and it's very long and drawn out, and there are multiple applications per city, and it's just very complicated. And what the city has done in submitting a challenge to STIR into a program like this is to try something new. And so to be a STIR startup is to bridge that gap between what the city is willing to try and what you're willing to give. And I think for our experience, one thing that I wanted to make sure that our team did really well was to have really high empathy for the process, because why a city would put out a challenge to begin with is because they feel this pain point very, very badly, and they wanted some solution to solve it. And in order to do that, we had to feel that pain equally badly and to work on something that can solve it for them.
Yeah, I'll chime in and say it's a very collaborative process. There were weeks where we were working like pretty much, hand in hand with Rob over in City Hall, and so we were kind of beating a path between our office and City Hall. It's really cool because we, from our process, what we're like as a company, what we typically do is work with clients and work on our clients' problems and then build a solution to that. And we do that in a service capacity. With STIR, we did that. We did that as a partner, like even more so than we would as a client vendor. And we were able to create something, and we now have a product that we've built that specifically addresses the needs for San Francisco, but it's hopefully going to address the needs of every other city as well. And so it was a really cool way to start a new product and build something new collaboratively.
Great, thank you both for sharing that. And then I'll just add just a couple kind of tactical things. So once you apply and you're selected, everyone attends kind of an orientation and then a scoping workshop where you take what you apply to, the challenge statement, and really look at that and define a scope of work for the 16 weeks that you'll be participating in the program. And during that time, you'll also develop a cadence for weekly communications. It does involve some on-site requirements. You don't have to be on site with your city partner the full 16 weeks, but there's about 4 phases to STIR traditionally. There's the discovery phase, where you'll be doing stakeholder interviews to validate the problem statement. There's a design phase where you'll kind of come together based on your research to define what the prototype or MVP will be. There's the build itself, and then you come back and do the user testing, and that's all done in that 16-week engagement. And so there is an opportunity to kind of help shape what that will look like. And that's one of the reasons you'll notice that of the 2017-2018 challenges that we have listed on the website, all 37 are fairly descriptive and not prescriptive. We want to be open to what you think an approach could be. And so there's a lot of opportunities there if you have interest, and we encourage you to learn more. See if there's any other questions. Yuri asked a couple questions around procurement. And so Yuri, what I can share is the average procurement time will vary city to city. And it ends upon a couple different things: your partner and your ability to navigate a city's standardized SaaS contract and requirements. And so for some, that's fairly quick. It can be done in 3 to 6 months. We have others that are still working through that process. So the procurement times do vary. On average, once you apply to Startup and Residence and you've gone through the 4-month residency, A third of our startups have been able to kind of move into contracting within that first year phase. Some are still in the process. Some have moved on to pursue contracting with other GovTech partners and government agencies. Binti is a great example. They signed a contract with the Human Services Agency in San Francisco, and now I think are on to the 23rd or 24th government contract with partners. And as Tony and Tiffany both mentioned at the beginning, this is really kind of a pathway to a GovTech portfolio. So once you are working with your partner, a lot of gates and doorways open to other respective departments and agencies at the local and state level who are also possibly interested in a validated solution that was built with a government partner, and understanding their unique nuances.
Mm-hmm. And then just one thing I would add is that we, as part of the program, we do, as Dee has mentioned, we have some trainings in place, and we will, especially this year, we'll pick up even more, help the startups with the vendor registration process, because for each government partner that you'll be working with, you'll need to become an approved vendor, and that can be a complicated process. And so this is another sort of way, the STIR is another way where you'll get really support and guidance through some of those materials.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, while some of you maybe ask a few more questions, we want Startup in Residence to be both a hands-on experience where you get to build with a potential target customer, understand how to build with government, how to sell to government, and then we really pull in our pool of ambassadors to do office hours and mentoring sessions to provide more of a 360 perspective around GovTech and the civic tech space. And so you can look on our website for our ambassador pool, and that's also part of the Startup in Residence benefit structure. So there's the opportunity to do hands-on work with a government partner, an opportunity to work within a streamlined process to receive a contract, ultimately if that's successful, and also just to learn more about this new and growing and emerging marketplace. And then just a couple more questions around the scoping process someone asked. So yes, there is an opportunity, as I shared, after you've been selected to do an in-depth scoping session. And so you have, it's pretty detailed. You get to walk through kind of what the prospective challenge is, what your startup's model is, what your kind of approach would be, but it really is an opportunity to define what the scope of work will be for that 16-week engagement. So for many of you, you may have existing products that you're hoping to kind of bring into GovTech, and for some of you, you may have a GovTech-focused product. Startup in Residence is really about kind of going back into the design phase and thinking about what is the problem, what is the need, how can my technology best deliver that, with some tweaks and some adjustments made to some existing technologies, and in other cases building completely new products or platforms or applications. It will just depend on the scope of each challenge itself, but it's a pretty collaborative process, to Tony's point. It's not kind of one-sided. We ask the teams from the city side to be open-minded and work with our partners to define kind of the right size pilot for STIR.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add to AM583's question here. Will you have a chance to share your startup's business model with the city to assess compatibility before work starts? I think if you're, my recommendation would be, if you have a specific business model that you're not necessarily going to be flexible about, that would be something I would actually bring up in the interview process, versus waiting until the scoping workshop. It would be something that you'd want to share with them and just get as a question to your department and say that you've been selected as a top 3. say, you know, here's our business model. Is this something that the city can do? And then also I would also encourage you to be open-minded that government pricing and procurement might be a little different than other industry segments. And so something to keep in mind, to think about, and that's really part of the goal of the program, is to give you an opportunity to learn about how all that process works.
Yeah, and then I'll let Tiffany and Tony see if they have any closing statements. Yuri, I'll just answer your question very briefly. The size of the contract varies depending on the technology. I would say on average, our contracts are under 100,000, some between 10 to 50, and some slightly larger. But one of the reasons for this is we're encouraging departments to think about breaking down kind of these larger, complex problems that they build traditional RFP for us, to think about what can be done immediately, what can we test out, what can we pilot, how do we really get this idea or this concept into action so we can start using and testing a real technology. And the growth opportunity is the upside. It's the ability to move into multiple departments within a city. It's the ability to move into multiple agencies, the way Binti has done, really leveraging their partnership through the Human Services Agency. And you can see a few articles from them, both on our website, and if you just kind of look for them online. But that's what we are hoping for most of our teams. And I think this current cohort that just completed, we had some of our strongest, and I'm really excited about their progress over the next few months as they finalize that. And so yes, it is a commitment. I don't want to kind of glance over that, but the value is really in unlocking this opportunity. And I think more than I can say, I'd love if Tiffany or Tony would maybe just give some closing thoughts about kind of that set of questions and their experience with STIR.
I'm happy to hop on that first. You know, for us, it's been a really great process. What I would say is, well, I guess there's two things, is that government needs technology like really bad, and needs, you know, all the startups and all these people who are, you know, willing to, you know, hop in and try to figure out these problems, come in and do it. You know, that said, there's a reason why government needs, you know, needs these products built. It's because it's really difficult for them to actually buy, you know, buy software and build software for themselves. And, you know, I think what STIR is doing is really important, because it's helping actually build a system where you can build a product that's specifically built for government. And yeah, it's been great to go through that process. You know, there's definitely, you know, working in the private sector and selling into the private sector, it's definitely frustrating at times, but it really feels worthwhile and valuable.
Yeah, I echo Tony's sentiments about it. One of the challenges and opportunities that STIR provides is, if you can solve the problem, or if you can solve the challenge in that particular city, you're very likely solving the same problem in another city and another city and another city. And sort of with the great thing about software is that it's scalable. If you can solve it for one city, you're very likely solving it for so many others that you can easily go from one city's recommendation to another, to another, to another, and then your sales just continue to accumulate. And also the impact factor about working with a city is that while maybe in private sectors you're working for tens of thousands of people, your product impacts tens of thousands of people, but when you're working with a city, that's impacting millions of people. So that's also another factor to consider. You know, how far-reaching can your product go?
Great. Well, thank you both so much for giving us some incredible insights. I know we're slightly over. Thank you, Krista, for helping lead the call. And to everyone that's joined on, we really appreciated your time and energy. We encourage you to learn more over at startupresidence.org/apply and hopefully join us next year to help solve some of these incredible issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye.